The NBA's new basketballs are ridiculous. If you're an avid basketball player or just a casual observer of the game, you might have heard about this new ball that's been causing quite a stir lately. And I'll tell you what, the reactions have been mixed. Some people are saying it's the best thing to happen to the sport since the three-point line, while others think it's outright ridiculous. So what's the deal with this 3D printed ball that's full of holes? Let's find out. Unlike traditional basketballs that use air as a method of inflation, the airless prototype is covered in small hexagonal holes that let the air through, not keep it in. But don't worry, Wilson says that the ball's design is meant to match the performance of a regular NBA ball as closely as possible, including the weight and bounce response of a leather ball inflated to regulation pressure. Plus, you'll never have to pump this thing up, and no puncture is going to put an end to your session. The new Wilson 3D printed airless basketball is the result of years of research and development. According to Dr. Nadine Lipa, the innovation manager at Wilson Labs in Chicago, the challenge was figuring out the lattice geometries and materials needed to absorb energy. See, the materials that bounce really well weren't durable enough for a basketball application, and the materials that were durable enough didn't bounce well enough. It took Wilson Labs several years to find the right combination. Before this achievement, all their prototypes either broke or failed to bounce. It's amazing how much research and development goes into creating a simple object like a basketball, right? And why did Wilson even bother creating this new airless ball in the first place? According to Wilson, the new ball is more durable, consistent, and reliable than traditional leather basketballs. But basketball isn't just about durability and consistency. It's also about the feel of the ball, the sound it makes when it hits the court, and the way it bounces off the rim. Here's where things get interesting. While the airless ball might sound like a dream come true for lazy players who hate inflating their balls, it's not without its drawbacks. For one thing, the ball is likely to pick up debris more easily than a traditional ball, which could affect its performance over time. And while Wilson claims that the ball will last just as long as a regular ball, it's hard to say for sure how the material will stand up to years of hard bouncing and clanging off double rims. Will the polymer lose elasticity and bounce over time? Only time will tell. Now, as you might expect, the airless ball has sparked some heated debates among basketball players, coaches, and fans. Some people love the idea of a ball that never needs to be inflated, while others think that the design is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Let's assume for a moment that Wilson's claims are true, that the ball really does feel and perform just like a regular basketball. Is that really a good thing? I mean, do we really need a ball that's full of holes? It's like saying, hey, let's take something that's been working perfectly fine for decades and poke a bunch of holes in it? It's like those shoes that have individual toe slots. Sure, they're different and interesting, but do we really need them? Let's also talk about the fact that these basketballs are 3D printed. That's right, the same technology used to print out miniature figurines and prototypes is now being used to make basketballs. It's a marvel of modern technology, but is it really necessary? I mean, aren't leather basketballs good enough? And when you think about all the things that can happen when a ball gets wet, you start to wonder if these new balls are really such a good idea. Let's start with the basics. When a basketball gets wet, it gets slippery. And when a ball is slippery, it's harder to grip and control. That can make it tough for players to make the kinds of moves they need to make to win the game. Now, imagine playing with a ball that's already covered in tiny holes. When that ball gets wet, those holes are going to fill up with water, right? And when those holes are filled with water, they're going to make the ball even more slippery than it already is. And let's not forget the fact that wet basketballs tend to bounce differently than dry ones. A wet ball might bounce lower or higher than a dry one, depending on how wet it is and how it hits the ground. That can throw off a player's timing and make it even harder to make shots. Then there are also concerns about the ball's impact on the game itself. Will the lack of air affect the way the ball handles and bounces? Will players be able to grip the ball as well as they can with a traditional ball? Think about how much harder it is to get a good grip on a ball that doesn't have air in it. When you dribble a traditional basketball, you can feel the air inside the ball pushing back against your hand. That's what gives you the control you need to make quick moves and changes of direction. But with these new airless balls, there's likely no resistance. That means you're relying entirely on your grip strength to control the ball. And if your hands are even a little bit sweaty or slippery, you're gonna have a hard time keeping the ball under control. And let's not forget about the nostalgia factor. basketball has been played with air-filled leather balls for decades. There's just something special about the feel and sound of a ball bouncing on a hardwood court. These new airless basketballs just don't have the same appeal. They might be practical, but they lack the soul of a traditional basketball. One thing's for sure though, the airless ball is a bold move on Wilson's part, and it's likely to stir up some controversy in the basketball world. No one is saying that these new basketballs are completely useless. There are some potential benefits to having a ball without air. For one thing, these balls are supposed to be more durable than traditional balls. Because there's no air inside to leak out, they're less likely to go flat or lose their bounce over time. And some players might even prefer the way these balls feel. After all, they're designed to have a more consistent grip over the entire surface of the ball rather than just on the seams. But for most players, the drawbacks of these new balls are just too big to ignore. We are all for innovation and pushing the boundaries of what's possible, but this new airless basketball just seems like a gimmick. It's like those infomercial products that promise to revolutionize your life, but end up gathering dust in the back of your closet. At the end of the day, a basketball is a basketball. It doesn't need to be reinvented or improved upon. It just needs to do its job and do it well. And this new airless ball? Well, let's just say it's ridiculous. Note that Wilson, the company behind the new basketball, isn't actually making these balls to sell them at this point, and they're not pushing the NBA to use them in games either. In fact, they've been very clear that this ball is just a prototype, and there will be no changes made to the Wilson NBA official game ball. So what's the point of this new ball, you might ask? Well, it seems that Wilson is using it more as a proof of concept. They want to show that they can make a basketball that doesn't use air and that it's possible to create a ball with a different feel than the traditional leather basketball that we're all used to. And while that might sound interesting, it's hard to imagine that this new ball will catch on anytime soon. After all, basketballs and fans alike have grown accustomed to the feel and bounce of a traditional leather ball. It's part of the game's history and tradition. But who knows, maybe one day we'll see this new 3D printed ball on the court. Maybe it will revolutionize the game and become the new norm. Or maybe it will just fade away into obscurity, a curious footnote in basketball history. Either way, it's always fascinating to see new technology being applied to sports equipment. And who knows what other crazy innovations we'll see in the future. Basketballs that can change color mid-game, or ones that can track their own movement and stats. For now though, let's just stick with the good old leather basketball. It might not be as high-tech, but it's a classic for a reason. So what do you think? Are you excited about trying out the airless basketball? Or do you think it's a silly gimmick? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates on the latest sports news and innovations. Thanks for watching.